So good morning everyone. Today's session is about direct retainers. So what is a direct retainer? A direct retainer is that component of a removable partial denture that engages abutments and resists dislodging forces. These components of a cast partial denture are called as direct retainers. So direct retainers can be classified into extracoronal or intracoronal. Extracoronal can again be divided into occlusally approaching clasps or gingivally approaching clasps. Intracoronal direct retainers can be divided into or can be called as precision or semi-precision attachments. So what are intracoronal direct retainers? As the name suggests, it is an intracoronal direct retainer which resides within the normal contours of an abutment and functions to retain and stabilize a removable partial denture. So as the name suggests, it is the retainer which is placed inside the crown of the abutment tooth. And extracoronal, as the name suggests, lies outside the contour of the crown of the tooth. So the basic principles in clasp designing are: the design should be such that the 6 basic requirements of retention, support, stability, reciprocation, encirclement and passivity should be achieved. Now here a very important aspect is the height of contour. What is the height of contour? The height of contour of any tooth is that line or imaginary line that represents the greatest axial diameter of the clinical crown when it is viewed along the proposed path of insertion. That means it is along the proposed path of insertion. You have decided the path of insertion, and on that path the highest or the maximum circumference area of the tooth is the height of contour. If we consider Prothero's cone theory, it conceptualizes the axial contour of an abutment that resembles 2 cones that share the common base, and that common base is at the line formed by the junction of these 2 cones, which represents the height of contour. What are the basic parts of a clasp or a retainer? So there is the rest, there is a shoulder, there is a body of the clasp, there are 2 arms which can be, on one side there is a retentive arm, on the other side there is a reciprocal or the stabilizing arm, and this whole component is joined to the major connector via the minor connector. So now the amount of retention provided by a clasp assembly is depending on many factors like the type of the clasp used, the flexibility of the retentive arm, and the axial convergence of the tooth surfaces apical to the height of contour, that means the undercut area. So as a general rule, the amount of retention designed into a removable partial denture should be always minimum necessary to resist reasonable dislodging forces. So the retention that is provided by a clasp should be as minimum as possible to resist dislodging forces. A rigid clasp flexing over the height of contour will transfer harmful lateral stresses to an abutment during insertion, removal and functional movement of the prosthesis. So what all factors decide the flexibility of the clasp arm? The first is the length of the clasp arm, second is the diameter of the clasp arm, the cross-sectional form of the arm, and the type of metal used. What are the different types of clasp retainers? Different types of circumferential or occlusally approaching, or also called as the Akers clasps, can be divided or classified as circumferential clasps, embrasure clasps, ring clasp, reverse or hairpin clasps, half and half clasps, and combination clasps. Now circumferential clasps, which are also called as the Akers clasp, is usually the most commonly used clasps because of its good retention and stabilizing ability. The basic design of the clasp is a buccal and lingual arm originating from a common body. The commonest form of extracoronal clasp used is a circumferential clasp. The advantage is it fulfills the requirement of support, stability, reciprocation, encirclement and passivity better than any other clasp designs. It is easy to construct and simple to repair. But the disadvantage is it increases the circumference of the crown. Food lodgement can be a problem, aesthetics is a problem, so anterior regions it cannot be used, and because it covers more of the area and tooth cleaning becomes difficult, it becomes more prone to caries. Coming to the next type, that is the embrasure clasp. This is essentially two single circumferential clasps joined in the body. It is used in the Kennedy class 2, class 3 and class 4 cases where no edentulous space on the opposite side of the arch is present. So the contact area should not be eliminated completely. It is very important that the contact area should not be eliminated completely to place the joint area of the embrasure clasp. It should be used with double occlusal rest, 2 retentive clasp arms and 2 reciprocal arms. The abutment tooth may be protected with crowns or inlays if necessary. It also depends on the age of the patient, caries index and oral hygiene. Again, the disadvantage is too difficult to maintain the oral hygiene. Maintenance is difficult and it covers a lot of area, so aesthetics can also be a problem. If there is inadequate preparation and inadequate clearance, it can lead to breakage. And because of the connection between two clasps, there can be a wedging action and therefore movement of the teeth or stresses on the teeth. Coming to the third type, that is a ring clasp. Then there is a lone standing or a tilted molar present. Normally a ring clasp can be used. It can also be used when a proximal undercut cannot be approached by any other means. So this ring clasp permits the engagement of this undercut by encircling most of the entire tooth from its point of origin. The entire clasp is placed above the height of contour and only the retentive terminal enters the undercut region. An additional occlusal rest can be provided to provide additional support. Another design contrary to the embrasure clasp is the half and half clasp. A half and half clasp consists of two circumferential clasps facing each other. Okay, so there is one circumferential retentive arm arising from the distal aspect and a second circumferential arm arising from the mesial aspect on the opposite side. There is one more design which is also called as a fish hook or a hairpin clasp, where the undercut might lie on the same side or the same on the side of the edentulous span. So you need a clasp which will turn around and go back into the undercut area. So this is again a modification of the circlet clasp and can be used on teeth with long crowns. It is rarely used because it covers more amount of tooth structure. Cleaning becomes very difficult and therefore is more prone to caries development. Now coming to a combination clasp. Now here what happens is there is a wrought wire or even a gold wire which is attached and to the main body of the clasp. So the tapered wrought wire where you need more flexibility and decreased retention, where the undercut is too pronounced. So in such cases you can go for a combination clasp which gives a stress breaking effect. The advantages, as we said, is the flexibility and the adjustability. As we know, wrought wires can be adjusted very easily. It is also aesthetic and a minimum of tooth surfaces covered. The disadvantage is extra steps in fabrication because it cannot be casted along with, or there is also a technique, but again extra precaution needs to be taken and it can be distorted by careless handling on the part of the patient. So it might require proper education and instruction delivery. Now coming to the second broad classification of gingivally approaching clasp. Now what we had seen till now is occlusally approaching clasp. So occlusally approaching means all the clasp where from the direction of the occlusion or from occlusal surfaces towards the gingival surface. Now here comes gingivally approaching clasps. So when you have an extracoronal direct retainer, it is occlusally approaching clasp, and the second is Gingivally approaching clasp. Intracoronal direct retainers can be internal attachments and precision attachments or cast attached within the tooth structure. They can be prefabricated or friction and also provide frictional resistance. Now coming to the gingivally approaching clasp, these can also be called as bar clasps or roach clasps. The bar clasp arm is classified by the shape of the retentive terminal into, they can be called as the T clasps, modified T clasps, Y clasp or the I clasp. And the very famous concept of RPI concept is delivered by using the gingivally approaching I clasp or I bars. So what is the criteria that is used for clasp selection? The first is the location of the survey line and the amount of undercut that is present. The amount of requirement for retention and stability depending on the number, configuration and the length of the edentulous span. Then the factor that decides the clasp selection is the nature of support, root size and form, aesthetics, and if there is a excessive tissue undercut present or not, and the oral hygiene and patient awareness. So now infrabulge retainers, bar clasp or gingivally approaching clasps can also be called as the infrabulge retainers, as they come or they engage the tooth from the infrabulge area. As we have already seen that a tooth can be divided into a suprabulge area and an infrabulge area considering the height of contour. So these clasps are the clasps which originate from the infrabulge area. So they originate from the denture framework or the metal base and approaches the retentive undercut from a gingival direction. So therefore it provides a push type of retention which is more effective than the pull type of retention provided by the circumferential or the occlusally approaching clasps. So what are the guidelines for use? They are: the approach arm of a bar clasp should never impinge on the soft tissues because otherwise it will lead to tissue injury and inflammation. So adequate relief should be applied under the arm. The approach arm must always taper uniformly from its attachment at the frame to the clasp. A bar clasp usually engages a 0.02 inch undercut. The approach arm should cross the gingival margin at 90 degrees to avoid irritation. The advantage is, as we said, it provides a push type of retention. It gives or provides with greater retention. It is more aesthetic because it is not seen on the occlusal 2/3. It comes from the gingival surface. The flexibility can be controlled by the length of the arm and its taper, and it covers less tooth structure than the occlusally approaching clasp, and therefore it is less caries susceptible. The disadvantage is because of the location in the gingival area, it has a greater tendency to collect and hold food debris, more gingival irritation, and it does not contribute to bracing and stability because there is no stabilizing arm or the reciprocal arm present. When a deep cervical tooth undercut exists, it cannot be used. When there is a severe tissue undercut, this design cannot be used. If the vestibule is very shallow, it cannot be used, and it cannot be used when the tooth is excessively buccally or lingually tilted. And if the height of contour is too close to the occlusal surface, you might need to modify the height of contour and then use a bar clasp if required. So as we said, types of gingivally approaching clasps are: first is a bar clasp. This is also called as roach or a vertical projection clasp. These are used on abutment tooth, which is tooth supported or tooth mucosa supported when there is distobuccal undercut present, in situations where aesthetics is very important, like the anterior teeth. So there you can go for a bar clasp. So here you have a rest, a minor connector, and a cast bar retentive clasp arm or a cast circumferential bracing clasp arm. The shape of the retentive terminal can be a T, Y or I. It classifies the or the bar clasp can be classified as a T, Y or I. Now this famous concept of RPI clasp was given by Kratochvil in 1963. So in distal extension basis, So this design is also called as Kratochvil and Kroll design, and Kroll redeveloped it in 1973 by giving it major modifications, and then it was called as the RPI bar clasp design. So here RPI stands for rest, that is a mesial rest, a proximal plate and an eye bar. So it is commonly used for tooth mucosa or a tooth tissue borne partial dentures. It consists of a mesial rest, a minor connector placed into the mesiolingual embrasure, and a proximal plate which contacts approximately 1 mm of the gingival portion of the guiding plane, and a cast eye bar retentive clasp arm located at the mesiobuccal prominence of the tooth or mesial to it. Good morning everyone. Today's session is about indirect retainers. So what are indirect retainers? Indirect retainers are the component of a removable partial denture that assists the direct retainers in preventing the displacement of the distal extension denture base by functioning through lever action on the opposite side of the fulcrum line when the denture base moves away from the tissues in pure rotation around the fulcrum line. So this is the definition of an indirect retainer given by the Glossary of Prosthodontic Terms. So as we know, when there is a cast partial denture, that is tooth tissue borne, or which we called as the distal extension cast partial dentures, there is a rotation around the transverse axis, which is the fulcrum line, and that passes through the rest seats on the distalmost abutment tooth. So there is a movement, and there is disparity of the movement on the tissue side and the tooth side. There is also a rotation around the longitudinal axis along the longitudinal fulcrum line. Now what is a fulcrum line? A fulcrum line is an imaginary line around which a cast partial denture tends to rotate under masticatory force, and this fulcrum line is formed by joining the rest seats of the distalmost abutment teeth. So that gives the fulcrum line. So as we said, there is a uncontrolled movement in the tissueward direction, and that can cause loss of retention and stability. Now this amount of movement is different on the tooth side and on the tissue side, where there is edentulous area and the partial denture is supported by tissue, the movement is more, whereas on the abutment tooth, now abutment tooth faces lateral stresses due to this movement. So this movement away from the ridge can be caused by sticky foods, functions of the tissues at the borders, by the gravity for a maxillary denture. Now how do you use indirect retainer to reduce and to control this movement along the fulcrum line? So the indirect retainer must be placed as far as possible from the distal extension base for better leverage attachment advantage. For most effective location for the indirect retainer is the incisor region, but due to the poor strength, canines or premolars are the most preferred teeth. They should be placed at a perpendicular angle or a 90-degree angle to the fulcrum line. It should be provided or placed on a definite rest seat which is prepared on the tooth that is selected, normally a canine and a premolar or a premolar. So indirect retainers can be provided in the form of auxiliary occlusal rests, canine extensions or canine rests, cingulum rests on incisors, or it can be in the form of a continuous bar retainer and a lingoplate major connector. And also the rugae area provides, coverage of the rugae area also provides indirect retention. As we said, forms of indirect retainer can be in this picture, where you can see auxiliary occlusal rest provide indirect retention, canine extensions or canine rests onto the placed canines which is near. If it can be extended onto the canines, it can also be given as an indirect retainer. In the mandibular major connectors, if there is a bar retainer placed and a lingo plate major connector placed, so that can also act as an indirect retainer. And coverage of the Ruge area, as we said, can also be used as an indirect retainer. Thank you so much.